They needed my signature by 5. The rain came sideways across the loading dock at 6:40 in the morning. I was holding a gray field service tote with a wet paper tag stapled to the handle. The tag said RGA 22 to 0417, Vantage 3 infusion pump, Unit 4471. Under the printed line, somebody had written in pencil, "Third bolus event. You're not supposed to be down here, Nora." Ray Dunning stood in the doorway with coffee in a paper cup. He is 58, a field service technician, and he has hands like old rope. He looked at me the way you look at a person who is standing in the rain on purpose. "I need the log off this unit," I said. "Then put in a request like a normal human." I did not answer, because my throat had closed. I was looking at the pencil handwriting, and my whole body was ringing. I knew that tag. I had seen that tag in a federal deposition 6 years from now. A lawyer named Perrin had slid it across a table in a conference room in Cleveland. He had asked me if I recognized it, and I had said no, and I had been telling the truth. It was Wednesday, March 5th. I was 34 years old. 2 hours ago, I had been 41 and dying on the floor of a rented apartment in Akron, with my license gone and my name in a consent decree. Now, I was here, and the rain was cold, and the tote was real in my hands. "Nora." Ray put his cup down on a pallet. "You okay? You're gray." "Don't send this unit back to the manufacturer," I said. "Please, not today." He tilted his head. "Holloway already signed the disposition. It ships at 10. Of course he did. Of course it was already moving. I made myself breathe. I set the tote down because my hands were shaking and I did not want Ray to see it. Then I did the only thing I could do at 6:40 in the morning with nothing but a memory. I took out my phone and photographed the tag. I should explain what I lost, because otherwise none of this makes sense. I was the Director of Regulatory Affairs and Quality at Corvin Medical in Columbus, Ohio. We made an infusion pump called the Vantage 3. An infusion pump is the machine that pushes medication into a patient's vein at a controlled rate. Hospitals bought ours because it was small, it was cheap, and it talked to their pharmacy software. My job was the boring part. I owned the complaint files, the risk documentation, and the reports we sent to the FDA. If a device hurt somebody, my group had to say why, in writing, with evidence. In my first life, I did that job for 4 more months, and then it ended. In late March, a nurse in Toledo called our complaint line. She said a pump had delivered an entire bolus dose in under a minute instead of over 20. A bolus is a large single dose given on purpose. Delivered too fast, it can drop a patient's blood pressure through the floor. There were 3 of those calls, then 5, then 11. Grant Holloway was our chief operating officer. He was 46, and he ran the company while our founder Ben Otway gave talks about the future of connected medicine. Grant told me the calls were user error. He told me nurses were programming the pump wrong. He wanted a document called a health hazard evaluation that said exactly that. A health hazard evaluation is the report where a manufacturer decides how dangerous a defect is. If it says the risk is real, you recall the product. If it says the risk is not real, you keep shipping. I would not sign it. I said I needed the device event logs first. 2 weeks later, the evaluation went out anyway. My name was in the approver block. I never signed it, but the file said I had, and the file is what the government reads. We shipped for 11 more months. 41 adverse events, 2 deaths that I still see when the room is quiet. Then the FDA opened an inspection, and the Department of Justice opened a file, and the company handed them a folder with my name on the front. Grant testified that quality had assured him the devices were safe. He kept his equity. He became Chief Executive Officer 18 months later. I lost my certification, my savings, my marriage, and the small, stubborn belief that being careful is enough. I answered phones at a call center in Akron for the last 2 years. I died at 41 on a Tuesday morning with a heating pad on my back and a payment plan on my kitchen table. And now it was March 5th again, and none of it had happened yet. Here is the part that mattered most, and the part that scared me. The Series C funding round closed on Friday at 5 o'clock. $80 million. Grant's new employment agreement and his equity acceleration were tied to that close. So was the CEO transition the board had already discussed in executive session. Before Friday, our outside auditors needed a management representation letter, that is a signed statement from company leadership, swearing there are no known problems being hidden from the auditors. Grant would sign it. He signed it last time. Last time, nobody ever compared what he signed on Thursday to what he already knew on Wednesday. I had memories. I had no proof. A memory is not evidence. A memory only tells you where to look. So I looked. At 7:15, I badged into the quality lab on the second floor and logged into our complaint system with my own credentials. Everything I did that week, I did in daylight, through the front door, with my own name on it. That turned out to be the only thing that saved me. I searched the complaint database for Unit 4471. One record came back. It was opened 11 days ago by a customer service rep named Devi. The narrative said, "Hospital reports unexpected rapid delivery, patient hypotensive, pump removed from service." The complaint was coded as use error programming, and it was closed. Closed complaints do not get device analysis. That is the whole trick. If you call it user error, you never look inside the machine. I opened the audit trail. An audit trail is the system's own record of who changed what and when. It cannot be edited by users. That is the point of it. The audit trail said the complaint was coded by Devi as device malfunction over delivery on February 24. It said the code was changed to use error on February 26 at 6:11 inches the evening by an account labeled G. Halloway. I sat very still. That was not proof of fraud. I made myself say it out loud in the empty lab. Executives change complaint codes sometimes, and sometimes they are right. It could be explained. A screenshot of a screen is not a chain of evidence. But it was a lead, and it was mine, and it was time-stamped in a system I did not control. I did 3 things before 8 o'clock. First, I exported nothing. I did not email a file to myself. I did not put anything on a personal drive. Every stupid thing I could have done that week would have become the story later. Second, I wrote a formal request through our document system, in the normal way, asking the EQMS administrator to place a records hold on complaint 22 to 0417 and its audit trail. A records hold is an instruction that says, "Do not delete or overwrite this." The request had a ticket number. The ticket number had a timestamp. Third, I called Priya Raman. Priya is outside regulatory counsel at Whitlock & Byrne. We used her twice a year for FDA submissions. I had her mobile number because she gave it to everyone and meant it. She picked up on the 4th ring, in a car, with a toddler yelling behind her. "Nora, it's 7:50. I have a coded complaint that was recoded by an officer of the company. I said, 12. The toddler noise stopped. I heard her pull over. "Are you asking me as the company's counsel or as your own?" she said. "I don't know yet." "Then let me answer both ways," Priya said. "As company counsel, I'm telling you the company has a legal obligation to investigate a reported malfunction, and destroying or returning the unit while a question is open is a very bad look. As a person who likes you, I'm telling you to make every request in writing and to stop guessing. Can I hold the device? You can request a quarantine under your own quality authority, she said. You have that authority. Use it in writing. Put a reason. Do not touch the disposition record Holloway signed. Add to it, don't erase it. And the audit trail? Preserve it. Don't interpret it, she said. You are not a forensic investigator. You're a witness with a job. I wrote the quarantine request at 8:04. I copied Ray, our contract manufacturing liaison, and the shipping desk. I wrote one sentence of justification. Unit 4471 is subject to an open technical question and must not leave the site pending device analysis. At 8:11, Ray replied with 2 words. Pulled it. At 8:19, my phone rang and the screen said Grant Holloway. He did not sound angry. That is what people never understand about men like Grant. He sounded delighted. There she is, he said. You're in early. Truck day, I said. Come up to 15. I want to talk to you before the stand-up. The executive floor smelled like new carpet and burnt coffee. Grant's office had a window wall facing the river and one framed photograph of his daughter at a swim meet. He was in a quarter zip and he was standing, which meant he wanted the room to feel casual and fast. I saw your quarantine note, he said. That's diligence. I like it. I waited. Sit, he said. Nora, I'm going to say something I've been sitting on for a month. Ben and I want to make you VP of Quality and Regulatory, officer title. Real equity, not the sad little Grant you're on. 6 years ago, I had felt my face get hot with pride when he said this. This time, I felt the floor tilt, because I knew what came attached. That's a big jump, I said. It's overdue. He sat on the edge of his desk. Here's the timing. The Series C closes Friday at 5. The investors want to see a quality function led by an officer. So, the announcement goes out Thursday morning, and the title is effective at close. What do you need from me before Thursday? He smiled, because I had asked the right question, and because he thought it meant I was already inside. 2 things, he said. First, the Vantage 3 hazard evaluation. It's sitting in draft. Legal wants it closed before diligence ends. It's a formality, but the file has to be clean. And second, the auditors are asking quality for a complaint summary. Send it through me. I'll package it with the rest so nobody gets confused by raw data. I looked at his hands. He had a pen he was not using. 6 years ago, I said, that's not how it works. And he stopped smiling, and I lost. This time I said, send me the draft. I'll read it today. And Grant Holloway smiled at me like a man who had just been handed the last thing he needed. The draft arrived at 11:02. It was 4 pages. It concluded that the reported rapid delivery events were attributable to programming error by end users, and that no unreasonable risk of substantial harm existed. Attached to the bottom of the file list, grayed out, was an appendix that had been unlinked. Field Service Summary, Q1. Ray's numbers. I did not open a fight. I opened a record. I replied to Grant in the document system, not by text, not in the hallway. I wrote it in flat, boring language, the way you write when you know a stranger will read it later. I said I could not approve the evaluation without the device analysis for Unit 4471, which was now quarantined on site. I said the field service appendix appeared to have been unlinked from the file and asked that it be restored. I said if the conclusion was correct, the analysis would confirm it in days. Then, I copied Priya Raman and our internal compliance officer, Dale Mbeki, and I hit send at 11:19, 4 minutes. That is how long it took. Grant's reply came to me only, in the same system, with his name on it. Nora, the appendix is out of scope and stays out. Use the February 26 review date. The analysis can follow. I need this approved before the rep letter Thursday. Do not copy Dale on quality drafts again. I read it 3 times. He had put it in writing, in a validated system, with a version history, in a company he did not own, 4 days before he would sign a letter swearing there was nothing to hide. I closed my laptop and looked out at the rain on the parking deck. He thought he had just closed the door. He had just signed the first page of it. Continue. Device analysis is not glamorous. It is a woman named Wendy Park in a static-controlled room with a laptop and a service cable. I walked Unit 4471 down myself at 1 o'clock, with the quarantine tag still on the tote and Ray as a second set of eyes. 2 people, 1 chain of custody form, 1 signature each. Wendy printed the form and stapled it to the job folder before she touched anything. You want the full extraction or the summary? She asked. Full. And I want Kestrel on the phone while you do it. Kestrel Manufacturing built our pumps under contract in Duluth. They owned the firmware build records. If our own analysis was ever questioned, I wanted the maker of the machine listening while it happened. Wendy dialed. An engineer named Josh Feld picked up and put us on speaker in a room with a loud fan. The Vantage 3 keeps an internal event log. Every dose, every alarm, every sensor recalibration, stamped by the pump's own clock. The user cannot edit it. That is the whole reason it exists. The extraction took 19 minutes. Wendy read it out while it scrolled. February 23rd, 21:14 hours. Bolus programmed. 20 minutes, 100 milliliters. Okay, Josh said. 21:14 and 40 seconds. Flow sensor recalibration event. Code F22. The fan noise on Josh's end changed, like he had stood up. 21:15 and 50 seconds. Infusion complete. Delivered volume, 98 milliliters. Nobody said anything for a second. A 20-minute bolus had finished in 90 seconds. Not because a nurse typed the wrong number. The pump's own log said it had been told to run for 20 minutes, and then a sensor fault had thrown it into a delivery rate it should never reach. Josh, I said, what is F22? It's a recalibration routine, he said carefully. It fires when the flow sensor reads out of tolerance. It's supposed to pause delivery while it runs. Does it? Long pause. In build 4.1.2, there's a known timing issue where the pause flag doesn't set before the pump resumes. We fixed it in 4.1.4. When? January. Wendy scrolled to the header of the log. Firmware Version 4.1.2. Is 4.1.4 deployed to the field? I asked. That's your side, Josh said. We shipped the build. Field deployment is a Corvin decision. Here is what I had, and here is what I did not have. I had a device log from a machine that does not lie, and a firmware engineer at an independent company confirming a known defect. That is a real finding. It says the malfunction is a device problem, not a nurse problem. It does not say anybody committed fraud. It does not say why the complaint code was changed. A defect can be a mistake. Companies make mistakes all the time and then fix them, and nobody goes to prison. What made it dangerous for Grant was not the defect, it was the date. Because if 4.1.4 existed in January, then somebody at Corvin had decided not to push it before Friday. And that decision had a name on it somewhere. I asked Wendy for one thing before I left. I asked her to enter the extraction into the job record herself, with the Kestrel call noted, and to send the raw log to Kestrel's own file. 2 copies. Both in systems I could not reach. You don't want a copy? she said. I want it where I can't be accused of touching it, I said. I went back upstairs and called Devi in customer service, and I asked her one question. Complaint 22-0-417. How did you code it originally? Malfunction, she said immediately. The nurse was very clear. She'd programmed it 3 times that shift with no problem. Did anyone talk to you about changing it? Devi went quiet, in a way that told me everything before she said a word. Mr. Holloway called me, she said. He said quality had reviewed it, and it was user error, and I should be careful about coding things I'm not qualified to assess. Did he say quality? He said you, she said. He said Nora signed off on it. The pressure started at 4 o'clock, and it came the way weather comes, all at once and from every direction. First, my quarantine request was overridden. Not deleted, overridden, with a new disposition record from Grant instructing that Unit 4471 be shipped to Kestrel as scrap, non-conforming, no return. He wrote a reason line. Unit compromised by unauthorized handling. Unauthorized handling. Me. Second, Wendy's job priority got changed. Somebody moved device analysis 22-041, 7 to the bottom of the queue, behind 40 units of routine testing. Third, at 4:40, Grant walked into my area with Ben Otway. Ben is our founder. He is 60, brilliant about fluid dynamics, and useless about people. He looks at conflict the way you look at a wasp in a car. Nora, Ben said. Grant says there's a hiccup on the hazard file. There's an open device analysis, I said. It's not a hiccup, it's the analysis. We have a data room closing Friday, Grant said pleasantly. Every open item in quality shows up in diligence as an unresolved risk. That's what kills a round, not the risk, the word open. Then we close it correctly, I said. Ben rubbed his eyes. How long? Kestrel can confirm firmware exposure in the field in about a day. I can have a defensible evaluation by Monday. Monday is after close, Grant said. Yes, I said. Ben looked between us, and I watched him choose the easy thing, exactly like he chose it before. Grant runs the close, he said. Work it out. And he left. Grant stayed. He shut my door, which he had never once done in 4 years. I'm going to be honest with you, because I respect you, he said. That is a sentence people say before they lie. The VP announcement is drafted. It goes out tomorrow at 9. There are 2 versions of tomorrow, Nora. In one of them, you're an officer of this company. In the other one, there's a director in quality who obstructed a financing over a pump that a nurse programmed wrong, and who pulled a unit out of a shipment without authorization. Is that a threat? It's the org chart, he said. Sign the evaluation tonight. 6 years ago, this was the moment I told him the truth. I told him he was wrong and I was not signing anything, and it felt clean and righteous for about 4 hours. And then I was on the outside of every room where it mattered, and the file went out with my name on it anyway. The truth had not saved anyone. Being right had not saved anyone. So this time I did the harder thing. I stayed useful to him. Okay, I said. Walk me through what you need, exactly. His shoulders came down 2 inches. I watched it happen. I need an approved HHE, dated on or before the 26th, concluding no unreasonable risk, he said. And I need the complaint summary for the auditors to come through me. Then, help me make it survivable, I said. If I approve on a February date, my file has to show what I reviewed on that date. Otherwise, it's not conservative, it's sloppy, and sloppy is what auditors chew on. Fine. So confirm the review date in writing, I said, and confirm the appendix scope decision in writing as an operating decision, not a quality one. I'm not going to be the only name on a scope call I didn't make, He almost laughed. He thought I was covering myself in the ordinary corporate way, which is the most believable thing a person can do. You want a paper trail, he said. I want to not be the story, I said. Done. I'll send it tonight. Then I made the offer that closed him. One more thing. Let me sit on the auditor call Thursday. If they ask quality questions, better it comes from me smoothly than from you guessing. No, he said, too fast, and then softened it. No, they'll rat hole on the complaint data. I'll handle it. You focus on the file. That no told me more than the audit trail had. He was not managing an inconvenience. He was managing a witness. I went home at 7 and did not sleep. I sat with a legal pad and wrote down what I could prove and what I could not, in 2 columns, the way Priya had taught me years ago. At 9:50, Grant's message arrived in the document system, confirming. HHE review date is February 26. Field service appendix is out of scope per operating decision, mine. Approved tonight so the rep letter Thursday is clean. GH. I read the last clause 4 times. So the rep letter Thursday is clean. He had just written in a validated system that the purpose of the review date and the removed appendix was to make a sworn statement to auditors look clean. I did not reply. I forwarded nothing. I did one lawful thing, and it took me 11 minutes. I filed a formal issue in our compliance intake system, the one every employee is told about in training and nobody ever uses. I described the facts only. Complaint recoded by an officer. Device analysis showing a firmware malfunction. Instruction to backdate a review and to remove field data. Device ordered scrapped while analysis open. I attached nothing I had taken. I referenced record numbers instead, so that anyone reviewing it would have to go to the system itself. Then I called Priya at 10:15 at night. He put the rep letter in writing, I said. She was quiet for a long moment. Nora, I need you to hear this. As of tonight, you have a personal exposure, and the company has one, and those are not the same exposure. You should have your own counsel. I can't afford my own counsel. You can't afford not to have it, she said. I'll give you 2 names. Meanwhile, you do not approve that evaluation. Not backdated, not conditional, not with a footnote. If you sign it, everything you've built tonight becomes your fingerprints instead of his. And if he signs the letter anyway, then he has made a false statement to auditors in a financing, she said. And that is not a quality problem anymore. That's a securities problem and a federal one. Thursday morning, he did not wait for me. I know the timeline now because I have read it in 3 different records. But at 8:50 on Thursday, I knew nothing except that the Vantage 3 hazard evaluation had moved to approved status overnight. I opened it. The approver block said N. Alvarez, delegated authority, approved by G. Holloway 2341. There is a function in our document system called delegated approval. A manager can approve on behalf of a direct report who is unavailable, and the system logs the delegation explicitly. It is meant for vacations and hospital stays. He had used it at 11:41 at night on a person who had emailed him at 7 that evening from her own laptop. The system had logged all of it, the delegation, the reason field, which he left blank, the document version he approved, which was version 6, which had been created at 23:29 that same night, 12 minutes before. I opened version 6 against version 5. In version 5, there was a sentence I had written weeks ago in the background section. It said, "One returned unit is undergoing device analysis. Conclusions are preliminary." In version 6, that sentence was gone. I did not run to Ben's office. I did not stand up and say anything to the room. I wrote an objection, and I wrote it in the system that had recorded him. I used the formal function for it, the one called approver dispute, which exists because auditors demand it and which almost nobody has ever clicked at Corvin. I wrote 6 sentences. I stated that I did not approve version 6 of the Vantage 3 hazard evaluation. I stated that no delegation was requested or granted, and that I had been at my desk and reachable. I stated that an open device analysis existed for Unit 4471, and that the sentence disclosing it had been removed in version 6. I requested that the document be returned to draft pending analysis. The system timestamped it at 9:01. It routed a copy to the document owner, to Dale Mbeki in compliance, and to the quality records file, automatically, because that is what the function does. That is the part Grant never understood about the machinery he ran. He thought the systems were furniture. They are witnesses. Then I called Kestrel on a recorded line, with Wendy on the call as a second listener. "Josh, I need one thing in writing," I said. "Not an opinion, a fact. How many units currently in the field are running build 4.1.2? "I can pull shipment traceability," he said. "Give me an hour." He sent it in 50 minutes, on Kestrel letterhead. From a company we do not control. 11,406 units in the field on 4.1.2. Build 4.1.4 released January 9th, with a defect note referencing the F-22 pause flag, deployment status at Corvin, not initiated. Then he added one line at the bottom that I have never forgotten. "We flagged the 4.1.4 release to your operations leadership on January 12th, per our standard notice. Copy attached." The copy was an email. It was addressed to Grant Halloway. He had known in January. Not suspected. Known, in writing, from the manufacturer 8 weeks before he told a customer service rep that a nurse had made a mistake. At 9:04, the announcement went out company-wide. Nora Alvarez, VP of Quality and Regulatory Affairs, effective at close. 40 people replied, all with confetti emojis. At 9:50, Grant signed the management representation letter to Brightman and Cole. I did not know it in the moment, but he signed it electronically, which meant a certificate of completion was generated, which meant a neutral third party recorded the exact minute and the exact IP address and the exact document hash he attested to. The letter said what those letters always say: that management had disclosed all known instances of fraud, all known malfunctions, and all product safety matters that could have a material effect. He signed it 14 hours after writing me an instruction to backdate a review and remove field data so the letter would be clean. At 4:58 on Thursday afternoon, an email landed in my inbox. It was not from Grant, and it was not from anyone at Corvin. From Elena Ferris, Senior Manager, Brightman and Cole. "Miss Alvarez, congratulations on the appointment. As part of our procedures, we confirm certain representations directly with process owners. Attached is the complaint and product safety summary provided to us by management. Please confirm by reply whether, to your knowledge, this the sum that complete and accurate as of today's date." I sat there with my hand on the mouse and my heart going like a bird in a box. He had spent 3 days keeping me away from the auditors, and the auditors had just walked around him and knocked on my door. Continue. Ray Dunning knocked on my door at 8 o'clock Thursday night, holding a plastic grocery bag. I had never given him my address. He had looked it up in the emergency contact sheet, which he told me about immediately, because he is the kind of man who confesses to small crimes. "You're going to get fired," he said. "So I brought you something." Inside the bag was a spiral notebook with a warped cover, the kind you buy for $1. Ray does not trust laptops. For 19 years, he has written every service call in a paper book by hand in order, in pen, date, hospital, unit serial, symptom, what he did. 22nd of January, he said, opening it on my kitchen table. Mercy Regional, Lima, Unit 3980. Nurse says the bag emptied fast. I swapped the set, called it operator error, because that's what the script says to call it. He turned pages. 4th of February, St. Anne's. Same thing. 19th of February, Toledo. That's the one that went in the complaint system. How many total? 6, he said. 6 that I personally saw. I reported every one to my manager, and I never once got a device analysis back. I looked at that notebook for a long time. It was not a company record. It was a witness's contemporaneous log, made by a man with no stake, in real time, months before anybody knew there would be a fight. In an investigation, that kind of document has a strange power. It cannot be revised, because it was never in a system that could revise it. Ray, if you give this to the auditors, your name is in the middle of it. He shrugged and pushed the notebook across the table. I've been putting these machines on people since before you had a driver's license, he said. I'd like to keep sleeping. I did not take the notebook. I told him to keep it and to photograph nothing, and to be ready to hand it to an independent lawyer when one asked. Then I gave him Priya's number, and I made him coffee, and neither of us said much. I did not answer Elena Ferris for 90 minutes, and those 90 minutes were the most careful of my life. Priya took my call from a stairwell. Do not editorialize, she said. You are not making an accusation to an auditor. You are answering a question you were asked, truthfully, within your knowledge. What if the answer ends the round? That's not your job either, she said. Your job is to not lie. So I wrote 9 sentences. I told Miss Ferris that I could not confirm the summary was complete. I told her that complaint 22-0417 was originally coded as a device malfunction and recoded on February 26, and that the system audit trail reflected the change and the account that made it. I told her that a device analysis on the returned unit was performed on March 5th with the contract manufacturer present, and that the pump's internal event log recorded a delivery of 98 milliliters in 90 seconds against a 20-minute program. I told her that the hazard evaluation had been approved on my behalf without my request, and that I had filed a formal approver dispute. I gave her record numbers for every one of those items. I attached nothing. If she wanted the records, she would have to ask the company for them through her own channel, and the company would have to hand them over, and there would be a request in writing showing exactly what she asked for and when. That distinction saved me later. Every document that mattered came out of Corvin's systems in response to a request from an outside firm, not out of my personal email. I copied Dale and Becky and Priya, and I sent it at 11:06 on Friday morning. Elena Ferris replied in 8 minutes, and her tone had changed entirely. Thank you. Please preserve all related records. We are suspending certain closing procedures, pending clarification. I am notifying our engagement partner and the chair of your audit committee. At 11:40, Margot Sandoval called me. Margot chairs the audit committee of our board. She is 64. She spent 20 years as a general counsel, and she has a voice like a door closing. Miss Alvarez. I have an auditor telling me my management representation letter may be wrong. Talk to me in facts, and stop when you run out of them. So I did. I told her the audit trail. I told her the device log, and the 2 independent witnesses on that call. I told her the Kestrel traceability report, and the January 12th notice with Grant's name on the address line. I told her the delegated approval at 2341 with a blank reason field, and version 6 created 12 minutes earlier with the disclosure sentence removed. Then I stopped, because I had run out of facts. "What don't you know?" she asked. "I don't know why he did it," I said. "I don't know if anyone else knew. I don't know whether patients have been harmed beyond the events in our complaint file. I have not looked at anything I'm not authorized to look at." There was a pause on the line. "Do you have the representation letter?" she asked. "No. That's not a quality record. I've never seen it." "I have," she said. "It was executed electronically yesterday at 9:50 in the morning, which means there is a certificate of completion attached to it, showing the exact time and the document signed. 14 hours after his message to me," I said. "14 hours," she said. "Miss Alvarez, do not leave the building today. Grant's counterattack started before lunch, and it was better than I expected. That is the thing about capable people who do wrong things. They do not panic. They pivot." At 12:15, HR sent me a meeting invitation titled Employee Concern. At 12:20, I learned that Grant had filed a written complaint against me the previous evening, before any of this. It alleged that I had removed a device from a controlled shipment without authorization, contacted an external supplier outside approved channels, and disclosed confidential product information to a third party. He had built his defense while building his crime. He was going to be the executive who caught a rogue employee. At 12:40, a shipping manifest was generated for Unit 4471, Priority Overnight, Destination Kestrel, Disposition Scrap. I called Ray. "It's on the dock," he said. "There's a courier here." "Ray, the audit committee chair told me to preserve records an hour ago." "That unit is a record." "Then get somebody to tell me that in writing," he said, "because Halloway told me in writing to load it." I forwarded him Margot's preservation instruction, which she had sent to me and to Dale in a company email at 11:48. Ray printed it, taped it to the tote, and put the tote in the caged area, and he stood in front of the cage until security came, and then he made security read the paper. 58 years old. He did that for a stranger's grandmother he never met. At 1:30, Grant came to my desk and asked me to walk with him. We went to the small conference room on 12, the one with no window. "Last deal," he said, and he sat down heavily, and for the first time he looked tired. "You reply to Ferris. You say the summary is complete to your knowledge, as of the date provided. That's technically defensible, because the summary was accurate on the date it was prepared. The round closes at 5. Monday. We start a full analysis. We deploy 4.1.4. We do a field correction. We do all of it. With $80 million, we can do it properly. Without it, this company dies in 6 weeks, and 11,000 pumps stay in the field with nobody to fix them. I want to be honest, that argument had a hook in it. You knew in January, I said. I knew there was a firmware release. There's always a firmware release. Kestrel flagged the pause flag defect to you on the 12th. I get 400 emails a day. You told Devi that I had reviewed the complaint. I never saw it. He rubbed his face. I was managing a process. I put my hands flat on the table because they were steady, and I wanted to feel that. Grant, I'm going to tell you what I can prove, and nothing else, I said. Not what I think of you, just what's in a system. The audit trail shows your account recoded a malfunction to user error on February 26th at 6:11. The version history shows version 6 of the hazard evaluation was created at 11:29 at night, and the disclosure sentence about the open analysis was deleted in it. The delegation log shows you approved it as me 12 minutes later, with the reason field blank. The document system shows your message, telling me to use the February date and drop the field appendix, so the rep letter Thursday is clean. The certificate on that letter shows you signed it at 9:50 the next morning. You don't have the certificate, he said. No, I said. The audit committee chair does. He went very still. None of that is mine, I said. I didn't take it, I didn't make it, and I can't change it. You made every one of those records yourself." He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw him do the arithmetic and get an answer he did not like. "You planned this," he said quietly. "No," I said. "I just wrote everything down." The institutional response did not look like a movie. It looked like a lot of very calm people canceling things. At 2 to 10, Brightman and Cole formally withdrew from issuing their closing comfort procedures and notified the lead investors' counsel that they had received information requiring further audit work. They did not accuse anyone. They said further work. In that world, further work is a siren. At 2:35, Whitlock and Byrne issued a litigation hold notice to every employee. A litigation hold is a written order to preserve documents because a legal proceeding is reasonably anticipated. Deleting anything after receiving one is its own separate crime. At 3, the audit committee met by telephone. It lasted 40 minutes. I was not in it. At 3:45, Ben Otway came down to quality in person, which he had done maybe twice in 4 years. He looked like a man who had been shown a mirror. "The committee has retained independent counsel," he said. "Outside firm. They're bringing in a forensic technology team tonight for the document systems. And Grant? Administrative leave. Badge off. Systems locked. Effective now." He swallowed. "That's not a finding, Nora. Legal made me say that. It's not a finding of anything." "I know what it is," I said. "It's a preservation step. The round is on hold." His voice cracked on hold. "They didn't kill it. They paused it, pending the investigation." Then he asked the only question that mattered. "The pump's in the field. What do we do?" That, at least, I could answer, because I had been answering it in my head for 6 years. "Today, we file the adverse event reports we should have filed in February," I said. "Then we send a safety notice to every account running 4.1.2 tonight, telling them what F22 does and how to work around it until we update. Then we start a field correction with the FDA, properly, with the analysis attached. That's a recall," he said. "It's a correction, and yes, it will probably be classified as a recall," I said. "It's going to be expensive and public, and it's going to hurt. And it's the cheapest thing available to us, because the other option costs somebody's father." He nodded slowly. He looked 15 years older than he had on Monday. Margot called me at 5:50 after the committee, and she spoke for 4 minutes without stopping. "Here's where we are, and you will not repeat it outside this call," she said. "The committee has instructed management to file the overdue adverse event reports tonight. We have authorized a customer safety notice and directed operations to deploy the corrected build. Council is preparing a voluntary field correction submission." "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me. I should have asked harder questions in January." She exhaled. "The committee has also opened an investigation into the representations made to our auditors. I want you to understand what that means. It is not about you being right. It is about whether this company made false statements in a financing." "I understand. You are a witness in it," she said. "Which means from tonight, you do not discuss the substance with Ben, with HR, or with anyone in management, including me. Independent counsel will contact you Monday." "And the complaint Grant filed about me?" "It stays open," she said, and she did not soften it. "It has to. If we dismissed it because we like your story, the whole investigation is worthless. It will be reviewed by people who owe you nothing." That was the moment I understood the shape of what I had done. I had not bought myself safety. I had bought everybody a fair process, including him, and I was inside it too. At 6:30 that night, the building was full of strangers in fleece vests imaging our servers. I should have felt triumphant. I did not, because here is what was also true at 6:30 on Friday. The hazard evaluation still existed with my name in the approver block, and every investigator in the world would start there. Grant's HR complaint against me was still open, and it said I had removed a device and talked to a supplier without authorization. Both of those things were technically things I had done. Context was on my side, but context has to be proven, and proving it would take months. The Series C was frozen. If it died, Corvin died, and 240 people would lose their jobs. And some of them already knew whose emails had frozen it, and 11,406 pumps were still out there tonight, running the wrong firmware, in hospitals full of people who had never heard of any of us. I had not won anything. I had only made it impossible for the truth to be thrown away. At 7:15, I walked out to the parking deck in the rain, and I sat in my car and called the number Priya had given me, and I said the sentence I had not been able to say in the first life. My name is Nora Alvarez. I need my own attorney. Continue. The forensic report came back on the 11th of April, 37 days later. It was 200 pages, and almost all of it was boring. And boring is what closes a chain. They rebuilt the document system from server images. They matched the version history to the delegation log and to the badge records that showed which door Grant used at 11:19 that night. They pulled the Kestrel notice from January 12th and found it in his mailbox, opened, forwarded once to nobody outside a folder he had made called Q1 Risk. They found 17 complaints recoded from malfunction to user error between November and February. 14 of them were recoded by the same account. They found Ray's 6 calls and matched 4 of them to complaints that were never opened at all. They found the certificate of completion on the representation letter, signed at 9:50 on Thursday morning. They put it on the same timeline as his message to me at 9:50 the night before. 2 facts, 12 hours apart, on 1 page. Nobody had to argue about intent after that, the timeline argued. I want to be careful here, because this is where stories usually lie. Grant Holloway was not arrested in the lobby. Nobody put handcuffs on anyone in front of the elevators. What happened was slower and, I think, heavier. The board terminated him for cause on April 14th. For cause meant his unvested equity died on the spot, and his severance did not exist. The company demanded repayment of his prior year's bonus, and when he refused, it sued him in the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas. The audit committee made a voluntary disclosure to the Securities and Exchange Commission about the representations made during the financing. The lead investor filed its own claim. The FDA classified our field correction as a Class 1 recall, which is the most serious category, and put Corvin under an inspection that lasted most of the summer. The United States Attorney's Office opened an inquiry in June. Grant's lawyers say he did nothing criminal. That matter is still open as I write this. It may be open for years. I have learned to say that sentence without flinching. He did not go to prison in a satisfying scene. He lost his career, his money, his license to be believed, and his ability to stand in a room and have people assume he was the adult. In our industry, that is close to permanent. My own review took 6 weeks. The independent firm interviewed me 4 times, and my attorney sat beside me for every hour of it. She charged me $11,000, and it was the best money I have ever spent, and I paid it off in installments without shame. They did not clear me because I was sympathetic. They cleared me because of the paper. The quarantine request I filed at 8:04 on Wednesday, with a written reason through the normal channel with 3 people copied. The chain of custody form Wendy stapled to the job folder. The device analysis run with the contract manufacturer listening. The compliance intake I filed on Wednesday night, describing the facts and attaching nothing. The approver dispute I clicked at 9. 01 on Thursday morning, before I had any idea an auditor would ever email me. My 9 sentences to Elena Ferris, with record numbers instead of documents. Every single one of those was a small, unglamorous, procedural act. Not one of them felt brave. Each of them took under 15 minutes. Grant's complaint against me was dismissed on May 2nd. The findings said that my handling of Unit 4471 was within my quality authority and properly documented, and that my contact with Kestrel followed the supplier agreement. The line I read 4 times said this: "The evidence indicates Miss Alvarez used available internal mechanisms in sequence and did not remove company records to personal control at any point. In the first life, I had been right and had nothing. This time I was right and had a file. The Series C did not die. It came back smaller and meaner. The lead investor cut the round to $52 million and demanded governance terms that no founder would have signed in March. 2 independent directors, a quality charter that could not be amended by management, a standing report from quality to the audit committee every month, in writing whether or not anyone wanted to read it. It closed in late July. About 40 people were laid off in June before it did, and I knew most of their names, and I do not pretend that was painless. I have thought about those 40 people many times. But in the first life, the round closed on time, and everyone kept their jobs for 11 more months, and then the consent decree came, and the plant went to 240 people down to 80 in a single quarter. Grant's version did not save those jobs. It only postponed the bill and added interest. Ben Otway stayed on as founder and chief technology officer. He stepped out of the CEO role voluntarily in August. He came to my desk the week before he announced it, and he stood there a long time before he said anything. "I read your email from the 5th of March, he said. "The one where you asked for the appendix back. I was copied on nothing, and I still should have known. You were busy being the future of connected medicine," I said, which was unkind, and I regretted it. He took it without arguing. "Would you have gone around me if I'd said no on Friday?" "I'd have gone to the audit committee," I said. "That's not around you. That's the channel that exists for exactly that." He nodded slowly. "Nobody ever tells you that the channels are real until you need them." He hired a chief executive from a diagnostics company in September, a woman who had run a recall of her own and had the scars to talk about it plainly. She called me on her second day and asked what I would have changed in March. I told her the truth. Nothing about my conduct. Everything about how easy it had been for one officer to recode a complaint at 6 in the evening with no second signature. They fixed that in October. 2-person review on any complaint recoding, permanent in the system. That fix will outlive all of us, and it is the only thing from that year that I am actually proud of. In June, Margot offered me the officer title again. Vice President of Quality and Regulatory Affairs, reporting to the audit committee, with a charter that gave quality an absolute right to halt shipment. She meant it kindly. She thought she was giving me back what had been used as bait. I said no. It took me 2 weeks to understand why. And when I did, I told her the truth. That title had been created to be traded. Every time I saw it on a business card, I would see Grant's face on the edge of his desk, telling me there were 2 versions of tomorrow. I did not want to spend 10 years proving I had not been paid for what I did. So I stayed a director, at my old salary, and I ran the recall. That was the work. 11,406 units, 211 hospital accounts. A safety notice, then a firmware deployment, then verification on every single unit, then a report to the agency on every single one. It took until October. It was the hardest and best year of my working life. Then, When it was finished and the last verification was filed, I left. Not angrily. I gave 8 weeks and trained my replacement and took the plant floor out for pizza. I took a job at a regional health system in Dayton, running device safety for 11 hospitals. My office has no window and my badge is beige. I am the person who reads the incident, reports nobody wants to read. Alina Cruz was the nurse in Toledo who called our complaint line on February 19th and was told she had programmed a pump wrong. She had not. She had done everything correctly, and then she'd been told for 3 months by her own charge nurse to be more careful, and she had almost left the profession over it. She got a letter in April, when the recall went out, explaining what the F-22 fault actually did. She told me later that she read it in her car and cried. Frank Deely was the man in bed 4 that night. He was 61. His blood pressure fell through the floor, and the rapid response team got to him in 90 seconds, and he went home 4 days later. He does not know any of our names, and he never will, and that is correct. In the first life, there were 41 adverse events and 2 people who did not go home. In this one, there were 9, and everybody went home. I keep that number on an index card in my desk drawer, not as a trophy, as arithmetic. Last month, Ray Dunning retired. 31 years of service calls, 19 paper notebooks, and one afternoon, standing in front of a shipping cage, making a security guard read a piece of paper out loud. We had dinner at a chain restaurant off the highway with his wife and his daughter and Wendy Park. Somebody had ordered a cake with a picture of an infusion pump on it in icing, which is the least appetizing cake ever made, and we ate all of it. Ray gave me the January notebook, the warped one, from the kitchen table. "You'll do something useful with it," he said. It sits on the shelf above my desk in Dayton, next to the index card. When new safety analysts start, I hand it to them, and I let them read 4 pages before I say anything. Then I tell them the only thing I actually know. You will not always be able to stop it. You will not always be believed, and you will almost never be thanked. But you can write it down, on the day it happens, in a place you do not control, through the front door, with your name on it. That is not courage. It is just a habit, and it is enough. More often than anybody thinks. Last Saturday, I drove up to Columbus to return a library book I had kept for a year and a half. It was raining again, the same sideways rain, and I parked 2 blocks from a coffee place near the old office, and I sat in the car for a minute before I went in. I was 35 years old. I had a beige badge in my bag, and 11 hospitals to look after on Monday, and a bookshelf with a $1 notebook on it. I got out and walked into the rain, and I did not hurry, because for the first time in 2 lifetimes, there was nothing behind me.